Most quarterly planning is just an ideas popularity contest, and it's got a really horrible high rate of failure. To be brutally honest, most companies are just wasting quarter after quarter chasing the wrong goals.
All right, guys, today I have something special for you. I have James Summers. He is a serial entrepreneur. He is the speaker at EO, which is entrepreneurial organization, which is the biggest club of entrepreneurs where I'm taking part as well. This is exactly how I met James. James is a serial entrepreneur for 16 years. He is developing a company called Conquer. He is founder and CEO there. Also, he is the lead coach at the Scale Coach. He working hands-on with other founders, help them to stop wasting time. And this is exactly what we will dig into today. I decided to bring James for several reasons. First of all, I believe he, as an experienced entrepreneur, as a coach, he has this great insight, and especially after the coaching session I went with him on the finances, got a lot of great, by the way, insights on really hardcore topic of the finances, which is usually, I believe, the topic entrepreneurs are not great at. I got this feeling that James has really great from the field insights, and I believe the topic we are getting into today, which is the planning, how to plan correctly, is something that's often overseen. People don't pay too much attention to it, especially while scaling, getting to the 8 figures for having already something. So let's go inside and let's dig into it. And I want to start with the big one. James, what do you think is the biggest lie business owners believe about planning their next quarter?
You know, most business owners, they play quarterly planning like it's Monopoly. In Monopoly, the goal is always to get a hotel, right? And they break it down into quarters. So they think it's simple. You build a house. 4 houses equals a hotel, like in Monopoly. And that's the first big lie. Quarterly planning is not that modular, and people treat it like it is, but really no 2 quarters are the same. And that leads to the second lie, which is that a leadership team can quickly and reliably pick the right initiatives. But the truth is if they haven't had specific training in how to pick the right initiatives, they will often fail in that. And after 5 years in the trenches with leadership teams, I've seen firsthand the frustration of getting it dead wrong again and again and again. And it can lead leadership teams to burnout chasing the wrong goals.
All right. So you're saying that the main problem is not the planning itself, it's choosing the right goals.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's that selection process.
All right. That's good. But then what do you think are the things that people are getting wrong? What are the things that are not to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's 4 things that really go wrong that are absolute, like, do not do. And the first thing is to let the CEO unilaterally decide. And this often happens either specifically, the CEO sometimes comes in, maybe they're even frustrated with how selection process has gone in the past. They're frustrated that there are other people in the leadership team, and they just say, this is what we're working on. And this can cause a lot of whiplash in any organization if the CEO is causing all the shots. But of course, sometimes it's that maybe there is a process where everybody brings their ideas, but because the CEO has an idea, everyone sort of goes with that idea. And it's the same thing. The CEO is calling the shots. And really, that's not going to help. Second thing is chasing pet projects. So always different teams, different parts of the company will want the whole company to focus on what their project is. If a marketing leader may want to focus on a marketing initiative, an ops leader may want to focus on an ops initiative. But again, the business isn't just a sandbox. You've got to focus on what's going to really move the company, the whole company forward. Third thing, don't vote. And this is the third mistake that companies make. They've all got different ideas, so they think, well, maybe the best thing is to vote. And I've seen different ways of doing that, sometimes just this sort of voting, sometimes using sticky notes, putting them up on the wall, the one that's got the most sticky notes. Oh, well, that's obviously the one we should go up with. But what you often end up with is the least offensive and also the least effective idea. And the fourth thing is, don't rush it. Leadership teams are short on time, so they naturally want to move quickly. But errors in selecting goals are committing scarce resources. And what leadership teams forget while they're trying to do things quickly is that they're betting with real money. So those are the four things not to do. So I guess the question is what to do instead. And here I would say, start with the real problem, not a convenient scapegoat, but the actual messy, fundamental issues. And the thing about leadership teams is they love solutions. Okay. That's how they got the job, because they're really great at solving stuff. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, highest company level sort of setting initiatives, the truth is that most problems, they're like cockroaches. And if you don't hit them dead on, then they just keep coming back. So once they nail down that real problem, or really problems, it's plural, they still have to prioritize. They're still going to have, there's always lots of problems. A healthy business always has lots of problems. That doesn't matter whether you're a startup, whether you're 100 million, 500 million, lots of problems in every business. You've still got to prioritize those problems. And let's be real, you don't have unlimited resources. The leadership team must have a real conversation. What happens if we solve this now? And what happens if we don't? And then weigh that against all those other cockroaches. It's all about the impact. Will the impact, if we don't work on this quarter, if we don't work on this objective this quarter, will the negative impact be bigger than maybe the positive impact of solving this? It's weighing both. And that's what they've got to do. They've got to find the real problem, weigh them up, and then, yeah, there's got to be planning, and they've got to track that, and there's lots of other steps. But as you said right at the beginning, it's the selection stage that I actually think is the most critical.
I love this analogy of the cockroaches. This is very relatable. This is how you feel it in the moment, at least. While we were preparing to this podcast, I know you have a really cool and interesting story how the planning went wrong with you in the business, how you learned this lesson in a hard way. Can you share it with us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. In my own business, I started putting quarterly planning into place about 2017. And I just watched quarterly planning slowly suck the life out of everybody. And the frustrating thing is that first, it felt productive. We're checking initiatives off, felt like a well-oiled machine. Everybody loved being involved. People reporting that it felt like they gave them more focus. They knew what they should be working on. But over time, reality kind of set in that we were just polishing the windows, but the foundations were cracking beneath us. The business wasn't really growing based off the work that we were doing in our quarterly planning. And people, like I said, really loved being involved, but they just started resenting the sheer time that was sinking into this. And then it was back in 2020 when I started coaching leadership teams at London-based scale-ups, and I saw the same pattern, and I started to see it more clearly. It's the same damn cockroaches. They kept scuttling back in, and it helped me see it so much more clearly from the outside as a coach that the real issues weren't being tackled. Companies were rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. They're wondering why that pesky iceberg wasn't getting any smaller. And there was one leadership team that I coached, and they decided to add 20 managers into this quarterly planning process. So normally, you have 5, 6, 7, 8. I've seen 12-person leadership teams. They brought 20 additional managers in. Is it admirable? Sure. Inclusive? Yeah, absolutely. But that's 20 full days, additional days, plus the core leadership team of lost work. The payoff is just a bloated process, more opinions than decisions, and zero of their biggest problems were being solved. But what I learned was that this excitement of choosing a goal, the drive that the whole team have to come up with a solution, they're still leading the teams to choosing the wrong goals. And they're spending quarter after quarter just running in the wrong direction. And that's when I realized it's the selection process that was wrong. It wasn't the energy. It wasn't even the intelligence of the people in the room. All of that was there. Adding more people made no difference. They just didn't have the art of selection.
Okay. All right. So basically, it's not about bringing more people in. It's not about just democracy contest. And this about choosing the right goals. Okay. Then let's go more tactical, right? So what then would be good goals and terrible goals? Can you give me some just examples of good and terrible ones?
Yeah. It's a really good way to start to sort of break it down, because even when people kind of find the right general direction. They've got to get that goal really sort of refined and polished in order to still make sure that they're pursuing the right goal. And the first thing is that people don't realize you've got two totally different types of goal. Okay. And the first is performance improvement. With performance improvement, you're just wanting to get better at something. Like, for example, increase leads. And if you said, okay, increase leads by 50%, this is terrible. This is terrible. And if you started to make that maybe a little clearer, maybe you said something like, let's increase leads from 5 per week to 10 per week. It's getting a little better, but it's still bad. A better goal here would be to get really specific, is to say, for example, increase the number of leads that proceed to a quote presentation in a client meeting, and to increase that from X to Y. And the difference here is from taking it just from being a number on a dashboard to specifically the impact that it's going to have on the business. Because once you set these goals and everybody goes off pursuing in that direction, they can increase the number. But you come back after the quarter, and quite possibly if it was just to get more leads, we all know that more leads might not necessarily lead you to what you want, which is probably money in the bank. And it's that impact on the business is where you've got to have that clarity. And I said there were two types of goal. The other one is a change initiative. So we've got a performance goal, but also you have change initiatives where you want to set out to create or significantly change something. Typically, it's like putting in a system. Classic one for small businesses is implement a CRM. It's a terrible goal, terrible goal. Bigger businesses, and I had this with larger teams, now they need to implement an ERP. Terrible goal, just stating it like that. Maybe they get more specific. They say, okay, well, I want to implement that ERP, have everybody trained by 3 hours per week. Now, that carries a lot of assumptions, but the difference is that it has clarity on the results that are going to actually impact the business. CRM, ERP, these are labels for a solution that costs real money. Rather shift the focus to the expected return on that real money expense. And the difference, this is the difference really between terrible and good. The objective at the end of the quarter is not to know whether the team went off and actually did what we said we were going to do, put the system in place, got us more lead. The objective is always to materially improve the business or an outcome for the customer. And that requires real clarity. And that's where teams struggle. They struggle in making their objectives clear. With the performance improvement goals, they use the SMART acronym because they can get specific and measurable. I want to increase from 5 to 10. I want to increase 50%. But they usually end up with a Frankenstein goal. It's like technically measurable, but it misses the point. And then with the change initiatives, it's even tougher to do this sort of specific and measurable stuff. So they often just put down the project title, new system, new CRM, new process, and then they just end down there. But you can only be as effective as your level of clarity. So they've got this selection stage, and then we've got this really critical next stage of getting the level of clarity around what the impact is going to be at the end of the quarter on the business that's materially going to move the business forwards in some meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's what came to my mind as soon as we started discussing this episode, and all of it isn't smart, the technology, right? Because smart is something that everybody's talking about, everybody's kind of implementing, and this is exactly what we're talking about, clarity, because this is what can bring it to the table. On the other hand, from my experience, when you're writing those goals, even with a team or by yourself, you try to make it smart. Still, it feels almost like everything is good on paper. On paper, in your Excel, everything works perfectly, very profitable, very much working. But it still feels like, and you have this theory that there are goals that are terrible. They look good on paper. They could look good on Excel, on PowerPoint, but they are terrible, actually. Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, when you asked me this question, I knew exactly what I would pick. I went back to a goal set by a company that I do coaching in. Give it some context. There's a company doing around 120 million in revenue. And I mentioned that not to impress anyone, but just because what I've learned in the trenches is that companies of all sizes struggle with this. This is not just a small company issue. And where this kind of terrible goal originated from is they very quickly moved towards the solution. And the solution was a change initiative as a system. They knew they needed a better performance management program, process, system, etc. And then, of course, they're using this SMART acronym to try and make it specific. So I'm going to read word for word what they came up with here. Establish a performance monitoring and management program signed up to by team leaders, signed off by the board in the May board meeting with clear communication requirements and a consequence management plan and 100% deployment by the end of June. That's it. And this is totally Frankenstein objective. And I know from being there that they didn't achieve this or even anything close to it, but it's probably a good thing, because if it did, there was no information in there about what they were solving for and what the true impact should be. It's just bad strategic planning. They could have put this program, process, performance monitoring, performance management, they could have put anything in there, and it would have ticked this off as having been in there. It could have been approved. It could have been 100% deployed. It could have had ticked the boxes of what that clear, specific objective was, but without any sense of what the impact would be on the business. And that's where it just totally missed the point.
All right. Okay. Now I believe it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear how the bad looks like in different areas with different stories. But now let's try to clarify for everybody what then the good looks like. How you should put the goals. What are the examples of good goals?
Yeah, great. Same company, actually. Pretty typical. They wanted their gross profit to be better. So it sounds like a performance improvement goal, right? So you'd say, okay, we need GP to be up 2 percentage points or to improve whatever it may have been. But when they really started to look at the problem, actually focus on the problem before jumping to a solution or before jumping to a SMART goal, what they realized is that their GP was slipping because people weren't seeing the slippage sort of soon enough. And the beautifully simple goal they came up with was they stated that they wanted to hit their GP target by creating a gross profit tracker, and they would look at this gross profit tracker in weekly reviews. And what's happening here is that they realized that the GP was slipping and people weren't noticing until it was too late. If they'd have made this a performance improvement goal, who knows how they might have gone about that. But then the first attempt at writing this goal was just to move the needle on GP, but that missed the problem. This simple hack of having a tracker that would allow them to see during projects on a week-by-week basis whether there was any slippage, just sort of elegantly raised the awareness of the team, and it lifted their GP, and it actually made it collaborative and fun. But the beautiful thing, the cost was practically zero. No actual sort of material cost, just a few hours of someone's time to put this Google Sheet tracker into place, but the impact was significant. And that, for me, is a beautiful example of a goal, is that the impact was outsized because they really got to the core of the problem. Sure, everybody wants higher gross profit or revenue or net profit, whatever that performance goal improvement was here, but they got right down to what the issue was, what the blocker was, and then the solution, like clearing one little hurdle, and it had an outsized impact. And for me, that's an example of a great, great goal, because they spent the time on the planning process, on the thinking process, rather than rushing to a solution.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But it almost sounds like it almost sounds like that the biggest thing they nailed is the kind of tracking system, accountability system, isn't it? In this case, so this is the thing that make it successful. From my experience in my companies, in other companies, accountability system is usually an Excel, which works good in the first week while you kind of have your eye on it, maybe second week, maybe month, until you kind of forget about it and it dies somewhere on your drive. And then maybe years after, you're going through the drive and, okay, we had this one. That was actually a good one, but nobody took care of it. It feels like this is the second bit which is missing, isn't it?
Yeah, most accountability systems just suck. And the biggest failure is not following up. And I mean, the solution, we know it, is to have weekly follow-ups. And I think the issue is that people come to that meeting sometimes and maybe there's not much to say. So next time there's the meeting, everybody looks at their watch. We're a bit busy. Should we skip this one? 1 week there's a holiday. 1 week, 3 people are away. There's other things. There's conflicts. And before you know it, you've had no follow-up. And for teams that are remote or working asynchronously, it's easier still to kind of slip into that no follow-up. And that's the manager's responsibility, right? Is to make sure that that follow-up happens, that there is a weekly pulse. Even if that weekly pulse is everything is beautiful, everything is on track, everything is exactly where we thought it should be, the plan is going, we're on course. Okay, great. That's a nice meeting to have. It's not always like that. But to keep that follow-up cadence, better to get everybody in the room for 60 seconds for everybody to say, it's a good week, I don't have any issues, than to skip that meeting. And as you kind of refer, and I think we've all experienced it, once you lose that sort of habit, it goes, it drifts, we don't need it. I check the Google spreadsheet, and then at the end of the quarter, you look back and actually, you lost so much time. And the trouble is, of course, it's pretty hard to catch up and do your homework the night before when you should have been working on it consistently for 3 months. Use those meetings as ways for people to come together and solve problems. That's where they should be spending their time. So yeah, weekly follow-ups is absolutely critical.
All right. But also from my experience, right? You try to put it in and you try to keep your eye on it, but what do you also want? You want the people to be kind of engaged. You don't want to feel like you are making people feel in yet another Excel, yet another meeting, or yet another slot in their calendar where they feel like they're distracted from their main KPI and focusing on something else. Do you have some ideas how to make people buy into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the sort of core skill of management and the core skill of this accountability and follow-up process that we're referring to here with sort of quarterly initiatives and goals is to maintain a level of drive. There's two things that you kind of have to really watch for. And one is anything that's going to drain people's energy. And of course, most meetings just drain people's energy. And that's because usually it's like a check-in and there's useless things in the agenda, or maybe the agenda has no structure, or maybe people aren't turning up to the meeting on time, or you're just getting people to do a progress report, whole bunch of things that waste people's time. The purpose of an accountability meeting, particularly when it comes to following up on quarterly initiatives, is you're there to solve problems. If there's no problems, great, but that's the reason to bring people together, right? It's people's time. You might end up, let's say, with 5 people in a meeting. So even if, let's say that's, if it's an hour, that's 5 hours. Probably it can be done in less. Let's say half an hour. That's 2.5 hours of people's time, collectively. So you've got to maintain that kind of high level of drive. Focus on problems, and then you've got all the people in the room that can help solve that problem. That's the reason to bring people together. It's problem solving, decision making, and then maybe what you're going to plan between now and the next week. So you'd lower that energy in the meeting by sort of bringing in other stuff that's not useful in the agenda. But how to get this drive? You don't just get drive from people because you're their boss, and to get that really sort of intrinsic motivation to execute. Often you have to make it personal. And if you did your planning right and you really got to the crux of the problem, then keep resurfacing that problem, because it's the problem that people want to solve. It's the problem that hurts. It might hurt their team. It might hurt other teams that are in the room in that meeting. So make it personal, connect it to their daily reality. And if you can get them to stay clear on the goal and clear on the process, and that may be what they have to keep coming in week after week into the meeting to adjust, to make sure they got clarity on how they're going to execute and reach that goal. If they got clarity on the goal, clarity on the process, then they will inherently stay driven and motivated. And that's what's absolutely critical. And that's often for me the difference between sort of an average manager that can deal with all the busyness of day to day and an outstanding manager is a manager that can maintain that drive. And so often it's about taking away the things that sort of really drag on people's energy, but really putting into focus and into sort of top gear the things that really push and drive that inherent energy, that goal focus. And that's what's absolutely critical in the follow-up, in that accountability process.
James, did you watch The Last Dance, the Netflix documentary on Michael Jordan?
Oh, I did, unfortunately. Definitely one on my watch list. What did you get from that?
there was this very repetitive quote of Michael Jordan. They take an interview of Michael Jordan and then going through the whole story of him playing with the teams and successes and everything else. And there's this recurring theme of him saying somebody did something. Somebody like thought that they are pretty good at basketball, for example, or like did like some 3-pointers over him, and he is like all the time, like 5 times in different situations, he's like, and I took it personally. And afterwards, he goes in absolute beast mode and destroying people, and that's exactly what it reminded me, right? So you have to make it personally for the people. You have to make it feel emotional for them. This is the problem you are working with every day, or the clients are coming back to us every day. This is how it feels. This is the the bad review we get because of it. This is a very personal idea, which you have to execute on. And this is brilliant. I like this idea a lot. But it comes often, it feels like almost to execution, right? To how well you personally execute it, which decisions you make and which moves you make. And I know you have pretty cool tip on how to execute. Can you share it with us?
Yeah, sure. So my favorite sort of totally counterintuitive execution tip is actually to kill off an initiative. And like at first glance, this makes no sense. Like most leadership teams, they'll sort of focus on their set maybe 3 goals, kill one off at some point in the quarter. You spend a whole day off site carefully crafting these priorities, and you kind of want to see everyone cross the line and sort of, get that kind of success. But as a CEO, as a leader, if you recognize that your priorities are changing, and they often do, and your perspective is changing mid-quarter too, your team will love that you recognize that and that you free up their time resource by killing off one priority. But be absolutely clear with the team that if you do this, that, yeah, their time is a precious resource. And if you're freeing up their time by killing off a priority, you have to be clear about where their time is going to get refocused. And that could be maybe some new issue has come up during the quarter. And the most effective that I've ever seen this hack used is when one team's project was axed so that they could double down on the project of another team. Then that team, bigger team, all work together to boost results. So a win for both teams and a massive win for the company.
Okay, so kill off the priority. Okay, cool. I want to put you on spot a bit, James. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So imagine I'm coming to you and I'm saying I have a company, and I'm not even telling you details, but we're doing some money, we're selling something. And I'm saying, can you fix our goal setting? But you have 2 minutes. You know that you have a taxi waiting for you downstairs. You have 2 minutes to help me. What would you say?
Biggest change that I've shared with other coaches and that they've then gone on to use with impact is to stop getting people to write down their idea for what to focus on this quarter. So in most quarterly planning, people will either write those ideas down, maybe they write them down on like a sticky note, maybe they call them out and they write them up on a whiteboard, is to stop writing down their idea for what to work on instead. And it's great if you've got like a sticky note, draw a line down the middle. And I get them to write on the left, I put a little title, problem, and on the right, they write the title, solution. So they get to write down the problem, and then they have to describe the solution. Just breaking down this thinking into these 2 camps, to think about the problem first. And then what I get a team to do, say it's 8 people in the room, maybe I get them to break up into 2, 3s, maximum 4s, get them to break up into smaller groups, and get them to only discuss the left-hand side. And make sure they've got agreement on the problem before a single word can be said about solutions. The first time I do this with teams, I usually do a little trick. They've spent all this time writing down the problem and there's some time writing down the solution. And I get them to just tear that in half and throw away the solution, because they've got to be in 100% agreement about the problem, because then they tend to have quite rapid agreement on the solution once the problem is clear. So simply that change, problem focus before solution focus, that would be for me the biggest single impact to the entire process.
All right, problem solution. All right. And one more short one. Also, you play in the same game. You have kind of 2 minutes, and you have a CEO. You have a CEO in front of you. You don't know the company. You don't know the industry. You know that something is off with the goal setting. And the situation is this CEO is setting a goal, and he feels like this is important. He feels like this is important, but this is not important. If you have to guess, what is he doing wrong?
Well, most CEOs are very keen to kind of check, once the goals are set, they're very keen to check on the progress of that goal. They always want to know, how's it going? How's it going? That's kind of their best take at like accountability. But I would say to a CEO, ignore progress, or at least in the way that you think you should be checking progress. Anytime you want to hear, you want to check on progress, and somebody's going to start reporting on that, most of the time you might as well bring your pillow and a sleeping bag, because people's progress reports will just send you to sleep. Progress really is meaningless until it's done. Done is only relevant if you had the intended impact or greater than intended impact. Instead, as a CEO, always comes back to problems. Always focus on problems. Even once that goal is set, your role as a leader is to help people with obstacles. And if you're a CEO, it's really important that you're involved in helping them with their obstacles, because big obstacles, they're going to require more resources, and nobody else in the organization has more authority over how and where to allocate resources than the CEO. That's where the CEO's sort of critical job cannot be delegated, is that allocation of resources. And so when it comes to solving issues, clearing obstacles and solving problems, the CEO has to be involved not only at that level in the goal setting, but in the accountability process as well. Because if an issue comes up, maybe you have to commit another $10,000, or maybe you have to commit the full time of an employee. The CEO is going to be the person that can quickly make that decision. And the quicker that decision can be made, the quicker execution can happen, the quicker a goal, or more successfully a goal, can be attained. So don't focus on progress, focus on problems.
It's great. Don't focus. Yeah, focus on problems. Okay, that's good. I know, James, you have a lot of time. You have to move on. So for our listeners, what would be your final takeaway? So if nothing else, remember this.
Focus on impact. Just this. Don't worry so much about the solution. Often these pet projects come to mind when we're setting goals. Always focus on impact. If you're the CEO, ask yourself the impact of this project. If you're the other leader in the team and you're setting the goal, think about what the impact is going to be. If you're choosing between two goals, think about the impact. It always boils down to this, is that you're usually going to you're looking for a gain in productivity, you're looking for more profit, or you're looking for more value for your customer. Productivity, profit, and customer value. It's going to boil down usually to impact in one of those three areas, and that's what you're competing with.
Where people can follow you, James?
Yeah, my handle is I am James Summers. So website is iamjamessummers.com. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok videos are all there. The handle is the same, I am James Summers. And yeah, it'd be great to get some followers and views there, of course.
Thank you, James. It was a pleasure.
Thank you too. Great one.